and we will go from there. Now, the Nearpod code, 4YH5U, 4YH5U, and it will be obviously in the classroom as said, and up here, top left-hand corner as per normal. So let's see, are you getting in there? Let's see who's gotten in there first. Oh, yep, number in there first, that's brilliant. Let's see if we can get the rest of you in there as well, team. All right, fantastic. So as you've correctly deduced, one of the topics that we've been discussing of late is this topic of unemployment. And where we left this the other day, which was yesterday, surprisingly enough, was we actually talked about some of the economic costs or consequences of unemployment. We're going to revisit that. Some of the social costs of unemployment. And one of the things that we said was that it was so bad, right? Economists thought unemployment was so bad that essentially we were going to use the word evil to describe it. And we don't normally do that. We don't normally say things are evil unless, well, they are. So thinking about how bad it is, unemployment. So therefore, because it's one of our goals, our macroeconomic goals for the government, we want to have as low a level of unemployment as we can possibly get. So we're going to be thinking about how to do that. All right, first things first, what does it all mean? So what was unemployment again? There we go. What was unemployment all about? Good work, Emma. Well done. No, you're on the right path. Fantastic, Sean. That's brilliant. Well done. Yes, Lancelot, that's right. Yeah, they've possibly lost a job. They can be unemployed and just haven't ever had a job as well. So it doesn't necessarily mean that they've lost a job. Yeah, but yes, they could have lost a job and become unemployed. What do we think, Irina? We add a thought in there. Fantastic. I'm going to show you this one. Yes. This is what Sean had to say. Apologies, Sean. I'm going to show everybody. This is really good. All right. People, they haven't got a job, so they're not earning an income. But, and here's the key part, the economics of this is all about the idea that they are actively looking for a job. Right? So in America and in New Zealand, I think it was you had to be looking for a job within the last couple of weeks. So right up to that point in time, have you been looking for a job, and that you are willing and ready to work. So someone comes up to you and says, here's a possible job, you take it because you're actually looking for a job. Yeah. I mean, I guess one of the questions is, what if they're offering you a job that you don't want, you know? Are you still then unemployed? I guess you would be, but would you be allowed to get your unemployment benefit? In fact, let's go back here. Let's go back to you all. So I will stop sharing. I'm going to jump to the chat. Now, here's a question for you. Oh, you've got a question. Yes, what is your question? Yeah. Yes, that's a very good question. That's a fantastic question. To be unemployed, no, you wouldn't be considered unemployed. To be unemployed, you need again, it's how governments create the data, how they frame the actual statistics. But more often than not, in a lot of countries, to be unemployed, you're actually collecting unemployment insurance or unemployment benefits, right? So you're actually registering with the government as being unemployed. That's how they know that you're unemployed, yeah? And in order to do that, you actually, as said, need to be actively looking for a job. So you're at school, you're not actively looking for a job, therefore you are not actually unemployed. You're just not counted, yeah? So all of the people who are in training institutions, all of the people who are in prisons, right, they're not counted as unemployed because they're not actually included in the statistics at all. Right? Yes, there's also an age as well, because I think you're hinting something there too. And again, it's that idea of what's called a labor force, which kind of sounds like some sort of fancy space game, right? The labor force. But the labor force is the people in your working age population who are actually employed and unemployed, right? So they're the people who, say, working age, so typically they're over 15 or 16, depending on the law in the country, and they might actually be under 65, right? But there's no hard and fast rule, again, at that top end, because we know people who are still working into their 70s, some working into their 80s, all right? I don't know that much people will be working past their 80s, yeah? My father was still working in his 70s. He's finished now. And obviously the current president of the United States is in his 70s. The previous president of the United States, he was in his 70s. So that's, you know, people working, right, up until that late. But yes, definitely around 15 or 16 tends to be the starting point. So if you're under that age, then yes, you're right. You probably wouldn't be considered unemployed. Right, let's go back into the Nearpod. No, I was going to ask you a question. Here's my question. If you're unemployed, let's imagine hypothetically you're unemployed and the government has created a list of jobs for you. Are there jobs that you wouldn't accept? Yeah, so I mean, you think about the types of jobs that there are typically. Hello, Aman, good to see you. You'd think about jobs that are available, right? You're going to find low-skill jobs. There will be street sweepers and cleaners and handy people building things, builders, demolition people, right? A lot of skills-based employment. Okay, and it may not be the highest skill level employment that you could probably think about. Right? So we're not talking doctors and nurses and CEOs. If you're unemployed, the only jobs that might be available might be those low skill jobs. So thinking about that, are there jobs that you personally, if you were offered them, would you turn them down, even if you were unemployed? What do you think? So just chuck a message into the chat. Would you turn down a job if you were unemployed? Would you turn down a job that was going to pay you money if it was a low skill job? What would you think? You can just type in the chat. Would you if you're unemployed, would you turn down a job that was considered to be a low skill job? Short term, yes, while I find another job. Good point, huh? Yeah. It's a tough one, isn't it? What do we think? I'm just going to check. Has Abu arrived? No. All right. Would for the moment, yes. Depends on the situation. Yeah, good point. Yeah. It's a question that we've also discussed. I mean, without, putting too many, thoughts in your head, but the current situation that you're in, that we are in the world that we are in, some people have lost their jobs. Well, what if jobs were available, but, like in America, there are jobs available. They could earn an income, but they're not necessarily prepared to do those jobs because they might be considered too low a skill level job for them, or that the pay, the amount of money that they're able to earn, they don't think is enough, but it's a job. Yeah. All right. Okay. Good hypothetical think. All right. We're going to jump back into the Nearpod. I'm going to share the screen again. All right. Now, we need to think about where unemployment comes from. So we've got four, basically, four main types of unemployment, 3 to 4. All right. First one is this called frictional unemployment. Now, when we talk about frictional unemployment, we tend to suggest that it is where unemployment, where people are temporarily between jobs. So they have left an old job, but they haven't found a new one yet, but they're going to, right? So these are people with the right skills, the right qualifications. They've left one job, they're going to be in another, but there's a gap between them. They're not automatically, just straight away walking out the door of one job into another. There's a brief period of time. Might be a week, might be a month, might even be up to a year, possibly. But there is a period of time in between the two jobs. Right? They are considered frictional unemployment. Then there's this one here, which is called structural unemployment. Now, that's got the word structure in it. Now, structure like a building, okay? So when there is an economic change that occurs, so there are skills needed by the economy that the people applying for the jobs don't have, all right? So you think about a number of computer people, right? And you know how to, all right, let's stop the sharing, jump back into the meat. Here we go. All right, in the chat section, how many of you, if you were asked to develop an app on the computer, think that with a little bit of training, you'd be able to do it? If somebody said to you, can you develop a computer app? You could look it up online, you could, do you think physically you would be able to do it? Chuck your answer into the chat. Let's see what we've come up with. Maybe. Yeah. No. Okay, fair enough. Maybe. No. All right. So, but there are jobs where people build apps. That's the job. Yeah. So jumping back into the sharing now. Apologies, I'm jumping around a lot, but it's fun. Within the economy is going to want people doing those sorts of computer and technological based things. Yeah. Things like, using robotics, the artificial intelligence in computers, developing the actual programming side of things. What about the building robots? What about the virtual reality, augmented reality, all of those sorts of technologically based skills? Maybe the economy is going to need people who can work with those. Yeah, and it might be it's just a matter of going online and doing some training and figuring it out. But we all know that there are going to be some people who are not going to be able to cope with that. All right, things to understand. When my father was young, there was no such thing as a TV. All right, and he's still going now, and we live in a world where there's iPads and internets and all of that technology, and he has had to learn all of that technology all the way through his life. Right? And you imagine that going into the workplace, never having seen a TV before, going into the workplace, and all of a sudden you're handed, a computer that connects to the internet. Well, how does it work? All of those sorts of things. My dad's actually really good with technology now. He still needs the occasional help with different things, but just consider those sorts of things. Can everybody do the sorts of skills that the economy is going to want? And the answer is no, they can't. So therefore, there's going to be some unemployment based on the structure, based on the skills and whether they are mismatched between the skills that the workers have and the skills that employers will need. And then another type of unemployment, apologies, is this one. It's called cyclical, yeah, or if you go to a different school, cyclical. I guess that depends on whether you are cycling to school or cycling to school. I really don't know, on your bicycle or your bicycle. Yeah. Cyclical is about patterns, right? So things that run in a cycle. So we can look at unemployment as being more running in a cycle, as part of what's called the business cycle. We know that sometimes there's less demand in an economy, and if there's less demand for the goods and services, like there is at the moment, then there's less demand for the people who make the goods and services. Then at other times, there's more demand for goods and services, and therefore there's more demand for the people who produce the goods and services. So therefore, unemployment could actually go cyclically. So frictional, structural, cyclical. Up to you how you pronounce that. Types of unemployment. Now, here's your next task. What was frictional unemployment again? All right, ready, set, chuck an answer in, and I'm going to turn off the mic. Oh, good work, team. Look at that. Absolutely right, Emma. Well done. Yes, Harjna, good work. Come on, Hong. Thanks a lot. Have a go. Yep, Sean, that's the one. Left the jobs, haven't found a new one. Yes. Well done, Kane. Come on, Brandon. Have a go. Wait a couple more seconds. Okay. Yeah. Yeah, good. So Emma's point here, workers are between jobs. They have left their old job but haven't found a new one yet. The key idea is yet, so that we are expecting them to find another job. They just haven't got one at the moment, right? So if you will, it's kind of a temporary thing. So they are unemployed, but we say that they are temporarily unemployed, which means that they will get a job. Right? There's implications, therefore, that maybe structural unemployment might actually be not temporary. Maybe structural unemployment might actually be long-term. Right? That might be a bit of a concern, you might think. All right, next challenge. Here we go. Let's have a look at 7 causes. There we go. We've got the cyclical, structural, frictional. Right, so if we have a look here, cyclical unemployment, we said that there was less demand, right, in the economy. So if the word deficient means not enough of, right? So demand deficient unemployment. So there's not enough demand that is causing unemployment. If we look at the structural idea with regards to unemployment, we could say that maybe there has been advances in technology, and we've seen that. We talked about capital-intensive labour productions. We saw videos where they were using robots in assembly plants and the like. Well, that all used to be done by people. So that actually could cause structural unemployment. And similarly here, job outsourcing. Now, I know you're thinking that if you've left the tomato ketchup outside, then you could be outsourcing. But in this particular case, we're talking about jobs that then go overseas. Right? So they were based in one country and they've now, relocated the factory, say, in a different country. Right? Frictional unemployment, remember that was the people who were temporarily unemployed, right? It could be that they've changed locations, so they don't currently have a job yet. It could be that they're newly entering the workforce, or it could be that they're re-entering the workforce. They were in it and went out of it and then they're coming back in it. Or it could be that they just voluntarily just decided that they wanted to change jobs, but are obviously expecting that they will get another job very soon. So those causes of those. What was cyclical unemployment again? There we go. Bonus points if you can remember the description about what it was. Yes, well done. Well done, Emma. On the rest of you. Yeah, you might want to add a bit more detail to that one, Lancelot, but yes. Yes, absolutely, Harshna, that's right. Hoping that even, you understand what that means. Good work, Irina. Absolutely right. Yes, ma'am. That's very good. Right, here we go. Waiting on a couple more. Okay, Sean, Brandon, here we go. Ooh, very good, Sean. Well done. All right. Okay, a number of you have talked about this idea of a contraction of a business cycle, right? Yes, and you're absolutely right. It is. It's about the business cycle. It's about the volume or amount of demand in an economy, right? So if you talk about there being more demand in our economy, then we are expanding, right, with regards to our business, the level of business in the economy. If we are seeing less demand, then we are contracting, shrinking, reducing the amount of business in the economy. And because we use the word cycle, we are going to be saying that that occurs in a pattern. right, which we're going to look at when we look at economic growth in the future. But there will be a pattern to the level of growth. There's going to be a pattern to the level of demand increasing, demand decreasing, like a roller coaster it's going to be, all right? And because it's going to be a cycle, that's going to mean it's theoretically predictable. So we're going to be able to see when this happens. So at this point, there should be more unemployment. At the other point, there should be less unemployment. So if it's occurring in a cycle, so that means it's a regular pattern. Oh, I'm going to stop sharing. I'm going to ask you a tricky question. Here we go. Back in the meat. All right. Okay, in the chat section, if unemployment is occurring in a cycle, which means in a pattern, all right, it means it's predictable. Okay. Why do you think that will be important for a government to know that it's occurring in a pattern? What does that give them the ability to do? Chuck your answer into the chat. If unemployment occurs repeatedly in a pattern, yes, good, absolutely right. It occurs in a pattern that's over time. Yes, absolutely, it could. Well done, Emma. Yep, well done, Kane, that's absolutely right. Because it's occurring in a pattern, they're going to be able to predict what will happen and stop it. Yeah, they're going to be able to say, this is what's going to happen, right? So those of you who have played sport, right, or life, okay, there are going to be times when you know something is going to happen, right? Even just the sort of the physics of things, yeah? Every action is an equal and opposite reaction, all right? So have a think about that. Give me 2 seconds. Right, absolutely. If the government can predict when unemployment will occur, then they're going to be able to put steps in place to prevent it. Well done, team. Rockstar level understanding. Very good. All right, now let's go back to Nearpod. Right, now what we see is something that hasn't arrived on the screen yet. Here it is. Why do we think unemployment was referred to as being evil? Well, we discussed unemployment before, and we said it was considered one of the big evils of the economy. What was the reason why we thought it was evil? Why did we say unemployment was evil? Quite a strong sounding word. Why do you think? Here we go. Why do you think unemployment is considered evil? Hold on. Oh, yes, absolutely. Yes, Emma, it does. Well done, Sean. Very good thinking. Yes, Aman, that's absolutely right. I'll wait for another couple. Their answers in. Okay. All right. So here's what Sean had to say. Because unemployment causes more negativity in the economy, such as slower economic growth, social problems, etc., because the negatives outweigh the positives or no positives at all, unemployment is considered evil because it's almost, if not, is purely negative. Yeah, that's very good, Sean. That's probably one of the better explanations that I could put together myself. That's very good. It's the idea that there were those economic costs and the social costs, and when you add all of that together, that's a lot of costs. Right? And the impact that that has on the economy and on the people in it is so large that we say it's, well, it's evil. Right? The effect of it, evil. All right. And some of these were some of those effects. Okay, talks about production and financial costs, spending power reduced, recessions, standard of living issues, insecurity amongst employees, crime and violence, all of those effects. However, things that we need to consider. Firstly, how is an economy actually made up? You remember we talked about primary, secondary, and tertiary industries. Well, those actually change over time. So as they change over time, they're going to lead to a degree of unemployment, right? And somebody, I'm trying to remember which class it was now, but somebody mentioned about coal mining and how there was unemployment with regards to coal mining, the coal mining industry. And that's absolutely true, because the coal mining industry is in the primary sector, right? You're extracting the coal from the ground, but there is much less demand. We've moved away from that sector over time, and therefore there's a lot more unemployment because the workers who work in the coal mines perhaps may not have the skill necessarily to work in the secondary or even the tertiary sector, right? Depends, okay? But it is possible if you change your economy, the percentage, so we might be, 60% of our economy is primary and 30% secondary and only 10% tertiary sort of idea. I mean, if that balance changes, then you're going to lead a whole lot of people needing to move to different parts of the economy, needing different skills in order to get to different areas within the economy to try and maintain their employment. We also just haven't really discussed much about the difference between full-time and part-time work, because some people might actually be employed, that means they have a job, but their job may only be part-time. Right, so not full-time, which means instead of it being like all day, every day, it means that they're only working a few hours perhaps every day or only a few days per week, however they sort of work it. Right? And part-time employees, maybe they might want full-time employment. Okay, and we have a lot of that in America, because in America it's quite difficult to get full-time work for some skill-based jobs. It's much easier for them to contract out part-time work. So you'll find a lot more part-time workers in America. So they are technically employed, but they might be employed in a part-time job and may actually want a full-time job, but can't get a full-time job. So they're having to work perhaps 2 or 3 or more part-time jobs just to be able to afford to live. And then there's this idea about organization within your sector. So when we're talking about organization, we're talking about things like unions, organizations that help protect workers' rights. Because as we discussed with regards to unions all that time ago, unions can actually create unemployment. Right? Because if you've got a union, they're going to put, wage demands on the employer. They're going to have, pay and conditions. So what is it like to work in that particular business? And the union says, no, you're now not allowed to do this, not allowed to do that, and they have to do this. And that costs the business money. So that may actually cause them not to hire as many people, right? And therefore, having a organized sector, i.e. having a union in that particular business sector, might actually cause there to be more unemployment. And this idea about high and low quality employment, right? So jobs that aren't necessarily matching your skill level, right? And we discussed that a little bit. I talked about whether you would be prepared to do what jobs, right? Well, think about some of those jobs that there traditionally are, some of those low skill jobs, right? Might be just, and when we were in China, we used to see people sweeping the roads, the actual roads that cars drove on. There would be a team of people and they would sweep the road to sweep up the dust, the dirt off the road. Right? And then along behind them would come a street sweeper, a machine, that would then sweep after they had swept. Right? But the idea was those workers were employed, they had a job. Because this particular city was very proud of its record of having basically zero unemployment. It would give the workers jobs, but you may not want that job. Right? It may not match your skill. Right? I don't know if you've ever been on a construction site, a building site, but you may not want those jobs. Okay, it doesn't match your particular skill set. Right. So, what we now need to do is to fill in the gaps. There you go. Right, here we go. Oh, Abu's here. You're supposed to tell me Abu had arrived. Sorry, I'm late. No problem. No problem. I need to change the register. Well done, team. Go see how you can go. A whole lot of 12 out of 12 so far. That's good. Just waiting on a couple more. So just to refresh, right, the structure of the economy, so primary, secondary, and tertiary, how your economy is made up, what percentages are within those, right? So 20% of the economy in primary and so on. Those structures will change over time, and that could lead to the idea of structural unemployment. We talked about there being full and part-time work, that some people might be employed but only part-time, and that maybe they want to work full-time. And the term that we use there is this idea of underemployment, right? Where they are employed, they have a job, but they're not employed fully. They're only employed part-time, so it's underemployment. We talked about there being an unorganized sector, and an organized sector. So whether you have a union, and a union protects workers' rights, it demands pay and conditions. So what we kind of expect them to do is to increase the cost of employing people. So therefore they actually could create unemployment. We've talked about this idea that there are high and low quality employment opportunities. Some jobs just may not match your skill level. And we had a wee conversation before about whether you would take those jobs or whether you would hold on out perhaps for a different job, one that better matched your skills. All right, now, what other things should we consider? First thing is the size of the public sector, so that's the government, versus the private sector, so that's all the other businesses, okay? Where is there more job security? So what we then say is that in the public sector, the government, if you are working for the government, there should be more job security for you. Job security means that you're able to keep your job, right, a bit easier. Right? In the private sector, it's more less secure. We're going to say less secure. So if, like situations you've got at the moment, okay, less demand for all sorts of goods and services, businesses and people losing their jobs, people losing their businesses, but the government has to keep running, right? There has to be a government. So therefore the government is more likely to keep people employed than the private sector. So therefore the size of those two different sectors is actually going to matter with regards to the level of unemployment that there is. Also this idea about having employment that's flexible, right? How many people in their jobs are able to change their working hours and the numbers of people employed quickly, all right? You know, it's not, we're not saying, you know, a 9-to-5 job, all right? That's the, you know, the old idea that you'd walk up and you'd, you know, clock into your job and you'd work 9 to 5. But what if you aren't needed 9 to 5? What if you were needed from 8 till 2? You know, what if you were needed from 12 till 10? You know, the people who are able to change their working hours quickly, all right, that might actually increase their employment, but it might reduce their job security, okay, because it's easier to, I was going to say fire, that's probably the right word. It's easier to fire those people, perhaps, but it might actually increase the employment, okay, because it's more flexible, right? So things like Uber or Grab, right, that we have here, those people are able to change their working hours. The people who work for Grab can have all sorts of different working hours, right, whenever they want. They can work this just 1 day a week, 5 days a week, these hours, those hours, and that will all change, right? We can also think about what's called temporal flexibility, so changing the number of hours and the number of people, but locational flexibility, able to change where your business is. Now, again, that's not something that's easy for every business. You think about factories. Well, in situations like this, factories have to close down quite often. But if you are, say, a teacher or other types of industries, you're able to work from home. Not always easily, but you are. So therefore, you are locationally flexible. You also might be functionally flexible. That by the way, the locational flexibility increases your employability. And functional flexibility, the ability to change tasks. Right? You were doing that. That was the key part of your job. Now we need you to do this. Can you do that as well? And again, it's that idea of skills and skills mismatch but also the ability to grow and learn with your business. And if you're unable to do that, your business grows and changes, and all of a sudden they're doing something else, you know, can you keep up with the business? Right? Well, hold on, let me jump back to the meat. One thing we have to remember, you know, companies like Nintendo, right, video game manufacturer, right, they used to make playing cards. That was their business, was the manufacturing of playing cards. And now they manufacture video games. Well, the process that they've gone through from manufacturing playing cards to manufacturing video games and video game consoles has meant that they've required their workers to have quite a considerable upgrade in their skills, and they've had to hire new people and do all sorts of new things. So are you able to change your tasks based on what your business now requires? Next one is wage flexibility. Now, this is a tricky one. Is your business able to change what they pay their workers? And how able are they to change what they, because that's the cost of labor. So if, you know, in times like now, which is very sad, and there is a lot of real heartache out there, right? If businesses are then saying, look, we can keep you employed, yes, so you will still have a job, but we're going to have to cut your pay. You know? And that, as sad as that is, I mean, you might say that, well, at least they still have a job. You know? So, you know, all of these ideas will help and need to be considered with regards to the level of unemployment in an economy. All right, now, you can guess what your next task is. Is there more job security in the public or the private sector? What do you think? There we go. Chuck in an answer. This is going to be your last task for today. Here we go. Is there more job security in the public or the private sector? All right, Irina says public with a question mark. Private, Aman. Hey, have a go. Waiting for the rest of you. Public sector, Emma. Okay, public. A couple more with public. All right, keep going, team. So we've got a couple more. Good work, Sean. Hey, Brandon, Abu, have a go. There we go, there. Okay, still waiting on a couple more. Hong Hashna, Brandon. Okay. All right. So, oops, actually, never mind. I will just have a look at this one. There is job security in public sectors. In the public sector is it is handled by governments who knew what to do when problems arise and will try to protect workers. Yes, private, though the individual and corporation may not care about the lives of the workers. Yeah, okay. Yeah, we jump back to the meat. Yeah, I mean, you're right. That is true, that the government tends to know what to do in those sorts of situations, and the private sector may not necessarily care about the workers. They may be more interested in profits and all of those sorts of things. The reasoning I thought was a good reasoning is the idea that the government still has to run. The government, you need the rubbish to be collected, you need the water to keep running, you need the electricity. If the governments can collapse, you're absolutely right. Governments tend to collapse for other reasons, right? So say, for example, there was political infighting and it reached a point where they just completely disagreed with each other and couldn't get anything done. Or the people of the country decided that they didn't like what the government was doing and protested and all of those sorts of things, which has happened, right? Or the government runs completely out of money and cannot afford to pay its debts, right? Generally speaking, though, you need a system or a form of governance in an economy. So someone will be there, right? And even if it's only a handful that are left, there will need to be someone there. And so therefore, you've got to assume that where a private business can go completely bankrupt and disappear, a government, there should be some form of governance at some level, at any rate. All right, team, now, here's your challenge. What you need to do, please. You're going to need to review the concepts that we've learned today. In fact, over the last 2 days, that would be good. So definitions about unemployment, causes of unemployment, the effects of unemployment. Today we've had a look at, again, those causes, but today we've also had a look at other things to consider, to take into account when you are discussing unemployment. So good to review those. Plus you are set a couple of tasks in the classroom about unemployment. It would be good to work on those as well. Yes, you've got a little bit of time to do those, but that would be good to do some work on too. There will be the recording from this session that will be uploaded. Otherwise, and you can review that and add some depths to your notes. Otherwise, you can have a bit of a break. And please do email if you have any particular questions, worries, concerns. Otherwise, as we'd say in the land of my birth, Acorn Era, which means goodbye for now.